Hey, second and third grade. Checking back in here for our how-to this week. I'm making sure we are outlining this week. You did all your details. I hope you did all your details. If you did not, no worries. But I wanted to show you what mine look like outlined. Like I said, you guys can do any kind of details you want if you haven't done them yet. I need to look back on the video from last week. It's been a crazy week so far, so my brain's a little jumbled up on what we got to last week. So if you've done your details, great, outline. If you haven't, this is a good time to stop and pause and start to do your details. They do not need to look like mine. They can be line shapes, any kind of doodles or Zentangles or any of those things that we've covered in the past, you can use to fill in your cactus, your sand dunes, and your sun. So today is about that. We are going to be outlining, and then we're going to be able to add some color with watercolor. If you have watercolor at home, you may get that out now. If you do not, please remember plenty of the techniques we've used where we've used marker and water to create our own homemade watercolors. I am going to go get my watercolors out and I will be right back. All right, guys, I've got my watercolors. If you have watercolors, now is the time to start to charge your paints. If we can remember what that means we are adding water to all of our watercolor pans to get our paints wet and ready to paint. So I'm charging those. My brush is now loaded. It's got lots of water. Now, we want to talk about the background. So we're going to start today with our sunset. And so we're going to have to really pay close attention to where our sand dunes were. We are going to go from yellow, orange to red. Okay, so we're going to start with yellow, probably for the first, I'd say 3 of these, 3 circles, go to red and then orange, okay? So I'm going to start with my yellow today, and I'm going to show you here. So now would be the time to get your watercolor, whether it is watercolor made homemade with markers. So remember, you could get some marker color on a piece of foil or a piece of plastic and add some water to it and get a homemade watercolor. So I've got my brush nice and loaded with some yellow, and I'm going to paint on top of here. So for the first, I'd say 3 bands of color, grab a little bit more, and make sure we really pull our color around, okay? So we don't want too many puddles. All right, so I got my 3 done, and while it's still wet, okay, I want to grab my next color, which would be orange. Okay, and I'm gonna kind of, in order to get this to mix a little bit, I'm gonna go just a little bit into the yellow, okay, and kind of just mix that together. Oops, I got a little bit of orange right there. That's okay. Now this paper that I'm using is not the best paper for watercolor, but it was the best paper that I had for drawing when I did this last week, so that's why. So I'm gonna pull my watercolor around. I don't want any puddles. I'm gonna use all the color I can before I need to redip my brush. And I wanna try my best to avoid my cactus because we're gonna paint that guy green. Okay. What am I working with? Orange. Okay, need a little bit more water. My orange is a little dry. Okay, gonna pull this orange around all the way across. You can see where my paper's kind of getting dark because there's too much water, but it'll dry still nice and pretty. So if your paper is doing the same thing, don't stress, don't worry, it'll dry nice and flat, okay? All right, so I've got my orange, and now I'm gonna move on to my red. Make sure your brush is fully loaded with water and color, and let's get that going here. Okay, again, I'm gonna pull some of that red into the orange and get it to mix just a little bit. Okay, I should have done one more thing of orange, but that's okay. I will just pull the red down. Again, I want the red to mix a little bit, and if it's not mixing, add some water to it, okay? And that should help it just a little bit. I'm gonna be really mindful. I'm gonna think and watch where my sand dunes are so that I don't get any red in my sand dunes. Because Actually, we're gonna continue the kind of like our colors in the rainbow, and we're gonna go from red, and it's gonna go down to purple and blue in the sand dunes. And I know, a lot of people are like, I say sand dunes are not purple and blue, but it's gonna look really nice. All right, so I've got my red going. And again, it looks a little silly just because I've got some spots on here, but like I said, they'll dry. All right, so we've got our sand dunes now. And our sand dunes aren't nice and laid out like our sun rays were. So we kind of have to play around with how we're going to add our color down there. Again, I got to make some purple because this pan of watercolors that I have does not have purple in it. Let's see here. Okay, well, it looks more blue, but you know what? It's okay. All right, you at home probably have purple in your watercolor set, which is really nice. So make sure that you use your purple, or if you have a purple marker that you're using to create your homemade watercolors, that should work too. Okay, I think I got it. All right, so now I'm going to take my purple color and I'm going to kind of bring it across my page, okay? Because we're not gonna follow the same like shape as our sand dunes. We're just gonna kind of split it into two sections. So I'm gonna have purple up here and blue down here, okay? So I'm gonna take some more watercolor, and I'm only gonna bring the purple to about right there, like I said. And I've got a lot of puddles in this one, which is okay. I'm gonna leave it because we're gonna wanna mix it with our blue here in a minute. All right, and then I'm gonna take my blue, okay. Got a nice blue down here. I'm gonna pull the blue down for the end of this. Now I know I'm going pretty fast. You guys know the drill. If I'm going too fast, please make sure you pause at any moment. My colors were already kind of ready to go. If you are having to create your own homemade watercolors, like I said, please take your time. Don't feel obligated to have to rush. Do what you can. Okay, so I am making sure some of my blue is mixing in with that purple so it doesn't look like just a harsh line. It looks like we kind of blended it in together, okay? Now, my paper is nice and floppy right now, which is fine. I am going to now take my green because, you know, Cactus, our cactus is green. And let's see here. Got some nice green. And I want to make sure that he really stands out. So we made sure that we did our warm colors in the background. So we did the yellow, the orange, and the red. And then we're doing our cold colors down here, our purples and our blue. And then the green looks so nice. It makes the cactus really stand out against all the other colors that are behind it. Now, my brush is a little too big, but you know what? We're gonna make it work. If a little bit of green gets into my background, it's okay. No big deal. Gives it some character. Shows that we really worked on it. All right, so my cactus is done. The painting should not take too long, but I did realize something. My orange and my yellow almost look the same. So I'm gonna take a little bit of orange and go back in, okay? And make it a little bit darker, okay? Because I'm like, man, my yellow and my orange look so similar. Okay, and that also goes with the fact that with watercolor, you know, watercolor is not supposed to be super, super dark like paint. It is supposed to be thin and light. So you have to layer. And, you know, we do a lot of layering and stuff in our classroom when we're doing projects, but sometimes with watercolor, we have to wait to layer until things dry. And you can kind of see that I had to let that kind of sit for a little while before I could add another coat. So now I can tell that there's yellow, orange, red, and then my purple, my blue, and my green. So today we're adding color. Now guys, if you don't have watercolors or you don't have the time to do the marker homemade watercolors, that's fine. Just use regular crayons or use regular markers or colored pencils, whatever you got. So these are gonna look super awesome. I'm excited to see them. I did go look back at the other video. We did do our designs already, which is perfect. If you haven't outlined, please outline first, then do your painting. And yeah, make sure to snap a picture and upload to Schoology, and I will see you next week. Bye.